Well, guys, this week I'm with filmmaker Joe Russo, and this is not the Joe Russo who directed Avengers or Cherry, but the other Joe Russo, my Joe Russo, the
Oh,
the one that matters to me. So Joe,
you just lost all of your audience, John Funk.
well, it doesn't matter. It's one that matters to me.
The real ones will stick around.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that was my little snarky intro to Joe Russo.
Yeah.
Clearly, you are a genre filmmaker. How would you pitch yourself?
The genre filmmaker is accurate. I've worked in horror and thriller and action, so I think that's a space I like to live. Uh
And you have commercial sensibilities, which I like. Um, what's your origin story? I grew up here. I went to school here. My first
sure.
experience, and then da da da.
Well, so I grew up in Connecticut, in a small little farming town, which is about as far away, physically and mentally from Hollywood as you could probably imagine. And I never thought I would grow up to make movies. I loved watching movies. My parents weren't really sports people, they were movie people, and they imbued that onto me at a very early age. And when I got to ASU, I realized they actually didn't have a film school. So I went into media analysis and criticism in the journalism program there and got a degree in that. And while I was doing that, I joined the film club, and they were in the process of petitioning to start a film school. So I got involved in that initiative, and we were successful.
What are your favorite films?
My favorite films? Well, my favorite movie of all time is Ghostbusters. Always has been, always will be. It has not been unseated in
Oh,
my almost 40 years of existence.
what are some Joe Russoisms? I mean, like when you make a film, what are some things that Tim Burton, he's gonna throw some stripes on somebody. Tarantino's gonna have that flowery language because that's just how he writes. When Joe Russo, what are some things that you think you've started to notice that come out whether you like it or not?
That's more like on the directing side, I guess. But um,
And by the way, so John, look, Joe Russo is the director and writer of The Au-Pair Nightmare.
sure,
Producer of Nightmare Cinema and writer of The Inheritance. We'll talk about those in a second, but
sure. I think one thing that has come out in a lot of our writing, and in a lot of the movies has been, and I think this is also just a sign of the times and the sign of, you and I are pretty close in age, so I think you can relate to this. As someone who got out of college right in time for the recession, um, I think the greed, corporate interests, 1%, um, that's dominated a lot of our work. A lot of the movies have dealt with, um, the 1% and their effects on the rest of us, and so I think in a weird way, that has been kind of the defining theme through a lot of my work so far. And I guess that goes back to what we were talking about before. It's the right way, but I think that's more like thematically. Stylistically, I love a good close up. I think people's faces are criminally underrated in movies, and I think when people get, or at least in modern movies, I should say, I think a lot of filmmakers have been shooting too far away. I think they've been so focused on these oneers, right? And they're missing out on just the amazing emotional complexity of a human face. And when we did the Au Pair Nightmare, um, which was a Lifetime movie. Um, I was looking at other Lifetime movies and seeing how they were shot, and because of the financial constraints and the time constraints in those movies, a lot of them are shot with like wide shot, medium, medium, move on, right? And I said, I want this to look like a movie. I want to get medium close-ups. I want to get close-ups. I want to get in
I want to
there.
elevate it.
Yes, yes.
I know that word gets overused or misused, but I know it when I see it, and I think and that's precisely what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that was the goal, that was the objective, and I love the way that that movie looks. I think people watch it and they go, this doesn't feel like a Lifetime movie because we shot it more like a traditional classic cinematic look. Yeah. Cinema. Well, Nightmare Cinema, we'll go chronologically. That came first. Um, I was working in development, much like you were when we first met, and I met a writer, director, producer named Mick Garris, who is probably best known for his collaborations with Stephen King over the years, like The Stand and the Shining miniseries. He also wrote Hocus Pocus, which is very meaningful to our generation. He also did a horror anthology series called Masters of Horror, and he was looking to do a soft reboot of Masters of Horror. Basically, the same idea, which is take some veteran filmmakers, give them a little bit of money, give them a little bit of time, and let them go hog wild. And so that was a project that I took with me after I left that development job. And I found the financing for the screenplay. Once the script was done and we had our filmmakers attached, my friend Brandon Hill and I went out and we found the financing for the production. And that was the first movie I supervised as a producer, basically from finding the money all the way through release. And I was on set every single day. I got to work with amazing filmmakers along the way, like Nick, uh, Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins, David
So,
Slade, who Hard Candy in the Hannibal TV series, Alejandro Brugués.
icons. These are icons. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Alejandro Brugués, who I would go on to work with on The Inheritance, and
Yep.
also Ryuhei Kitamura, a legendary Japanese filmmaker who did Midnight Meat Train with Bradley Cooper, and he and I are working on another project right now too. So it's been a really, it was an amazing experience. It was like the best graduate school I could ever ask for in terms of directing.
But it also
And
set the stage for
the au pair. Exactly. That's why I said we have to go chronologically. And I tried to take a little bit of like an arrow to put in my quiver from each one of those filmmakers and take it with me into making that movie. And really, truly, the au pair wouldn't have happened had it not been for Nightmare Cinema, because one of the producers on Nightmare Cinema, who handled all of our physical production, Nancy Leopardi, she offered me the opportunity to come up with a contained female driven horror movie that could be done for a very small budget in 14 days. And so my friend Amitabh Clem had just told me a story about this nanny murder that had happened. And I thought that might have the bones to be a springboard for what would become the Au Pair Nightmare. And that's basically what happened. I pitched Nancy that story, and she liked it. And we spent a few months workshopping the pitch. They got the financing for the script. We did two drafts on the script, and then the movie was greenlit. It was one of the fastest, smoothest development processes I've ever had. But the flip side of that was, like I said, the production was insane. I mean, we had 3 weeks of prep,
how many
3 weeks of
locations?
prep. How many locations? Oh my gosh, I don't know off the top of my head, but we designed the movie to mostly take place at a house. So I think we were at the house for 10 days and we were on location for 4, if I remember correctly. I think it broke out that way. But either way, that's you're running the whole time. And yeah, so basically between first pitching it to them, there was about 2 years before it actually hit Lifetime. So pretty fast in the scheme of movie making.
Tell us about your current film that's and where how that came about. I mean, look, I know it was a big it hit on the blood list. I like both titles. I know it's had. I wanted to know where
Has a new title, yeah.
I like those one word titles, which is a little bit
Sure,
basically, but
sure.
I also like your original title too.
Yeah, so the original title was The Last Will and Testament of Charles Abernathy, which I
And you
think,
wrote that, right? That's a Joe
yeah,
Russo,
that was me, myself and my writing partner wrote that.
and you wrote
Um,
it on spec, right?
we wrote it on spec. And like you said, it went around town, and we did the water bottle tour on it, and it got on the Blood List as one of the best horror screenplays of that year. And it was great spec for us. I mean, we met with so many companies off of it. There were so many fans. And but when you do the water bottle tour, you go around, you meet with people, you leave with a bottle of water and a pat on the back. Nice job, right? Uh, it came out at a tricky moment because um, people loved it, but uh, Knives Out and Ready or Not, which it was very akin to both of those movies, were basically in production or in post production by that point. And so everyone was pointing to those movies and going, well, yours is never going to get made because of this one or that one. And so it kind of just sat there in limbo until the pandemic, when Netflix was looking for um, screenplays that they could do. They were COVID friendly. They were one location, small cast, something that could basically do in a bubble. Um, this division of Netflix at the time was also looking for female driven thrillers. They were ready to dabble and try to experiment in horror. And our script got sent in a batch of scripts from our agency Gersh over to Netflix. And a really smart executive who was there, named Aaron Sanderson, picked up the script, read it, loved it, was attracted to it by the title, which is very ironic that that is no longer the title of the movie. And that's how it started. I literally was not expecting it at all. There was no like macro strategy. I didn't even know Netflix had it. I found out they were buying it when I got a call from my agent saying they were buying it.
Is there anything that you wish you had known earlier in your career, or any advice that you want to give to other, filmmakers?
The advice I always try to give people is your first screenplay won't get made, and that's okay. I actually wrote an article about that with that title. But basically, the idea that I think, and you could probably relate to this too, a lot of young writers or new writers, they put so much emphasis on that first script that if it doesn't get made, it's not a win. And they spend so much time rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it, and they're not getting better because they're still just working with the same kind of raw clay that was probably not that great to start with because they didn't have the experience yet to identify a story and great characters that are commercially viable, that are emotionally relevant. And I think the more you write, the better you get. And write that first script, get it to a point where it's as good as it can be, and then be ready to move on to the next one. Don't just keep trying to force that first script down people's throats because it might not be the one that gets you an agent or a manager or a producer. It took us a couple swings at bat before we landed on that, and I truly think it's a learned craft, and the more you do it, the better you get.
Is there any final plug other than go see The Inheritance on VOD, follow Joe Russo on social media, and
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter at Joe Russo tweets, and you can find me on Instagram at Joe Russo Graham. And yeah, Inheritance is on video on demand. Another one that I think turned out pretty well, that came out last fall, Soulmates, is also on video on demand. That's kind of Saw meets online dating. That was the first screenplay that really put us on the map. So another Bloodless script. So I think those two are worth seeking out.
all right. Well, Joe, thank you very much for your time today, and until my next video, thank you.
Thanks, Sean.